Hello.
Okay.
Hi, how
Hey,
you doing?
I'm good. And yourself?
I'm great. Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This is Najima. And I've got a guest, Damon, here with me today. Say hi.
Hi.
Welcome to our talk today. We're going to talk about pivoting. Damon and I are classmates. And earlier, when we started quarantine, I was saying that I was kind of really only connecting with Morehouse and Spelman people. And Damon was one of the people that reached out to me as it relates to some environmental justice issues because he noticed my interest. So we talked. Damon, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, that's broad. There's not much to say,
I beg to
I
differ, sir.
let's see. Well, graduated from Morehouse, you know that part. And since then, well, my major then was international studies, and that's because I wanted to pursue a career in the military, and for to an extent, I did. Um, while in the military, I did something totally different from what I expected. I became a chemical officer in the Army, and there, I we worked primarily in the area of chemical nuclear weapons defense. So if ever there's weapons of mass destruction out in an area, and there's the potential that it could be used, or it in fact has been used, my job is to make a plan for it and protect people from that. So in that, we are called CBRN, which is chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear officers. And so those are the types of issues we dealt with. Um, and in that, I learned a lot about contaminations and how that impacts the environment, how it impacts people, the health effects, and all those things. And and when I joined the Army, I was already a lawyer. So
Right.
all I wanted to do was to merge, especially by the time I got out of the Army. I still had the same passion because, you can only train on protecting people from weapons of mass destruction and have, and not have a passion for it. So,
Right.
even once I walked away from the Army, I still had this fundamental belief that people need to be protected from that. And
Hmm.
so I was in the National Guard. So our focus wasn't just on the active duty side, which is the weaponized side, but we also dealt with things when it just, if there's a train that derails or anything like that.
Right.
So in the end, I'm always thinking about how chemicals and radiation impacts people,
Mhm.
children, old people, anybody.
And
And
that's particularly relevant right now with COVID,
yeah,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. What happened with COVID? The research that I've done is that it shows that there's a strong link between environmental conditions and all of these deaths. So I just find it interesting because I think, was it the Surgeon General? I forget whom, but the issue was brought up about the disproportionate deaths that were impacting Black people. So
Right.
before, when it was just impacting people generally and people were dying, we want to think about how awful things are and we have to prepare and all
Right.
of this.
Right.
And then the moment is Black people, then suddenly is, take some responsibility. Like what?
Right. 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 Right.
So
The
while we
blame
want
is
to
the
talk
victim.
about, so while we want to talk about taking some responsibility, um,
Hmm.
I would like for the government to be a little bit more honest about its part in all of this.
Wow.
So, it's
We're
not
talking
just
about
about,
policy, we're talking about regulation, we're talking about what happens in communities, right?
yes,
Because you
right.
recently
So
had
it's
an
more than
experience.
just saying, oh, because somebody was drinking beer and smoking weed. Okay, let's go a little bit beyond that. Let's talk about in these communities, you will find these facilities that release emissions
Right.
of whatever chemical and metals and anything else is out there. And when people breathe it, or when it's absorbed into the ground and the groundwater, and children drink it, old people breathe it, and it's linked. There are strong links between these
Wow.
chemicals and respiratory problems. And COVID has been it kills people with respiratory problems.
We know that's what it
But we
is.
didn't want to have that conversation.
We
We
know
want
that,
to talk about drinking beer and smoking weed.
right? And
And
how
so,
George Floyd had COVID.
right, so anything other than for people to say, hey, there's a lot that's connected to the way that we destroy the environment, the level of greed, the level of short-sightedness. So as opposed to, in my mind, and I think that if you're responsible and you really care about the public, yes, it's good to tell people, that there are things that they can do to help themselves. But the purpose of government, in my view, is to do the things for the people that the people cannot do for
Cannot do
themselves.
themselves.
And we know for a fact that the government has been complicit in
Yeah.
allowing these companies to do the things that they do, to poison people. And so there again, going back to my military training, if I am trained to protect people from chemicals, weaponized chemicals from the enemy because it hurts people, don't you think I still have that same level of passion to protect my own people from the actions of his own country?
Yes, definitely.
So the passion doesn't go away. The
And this
education
is
didn't change.
happening in big cities, in rural areas, in
Yes,
small
absolutely.
towns, everywhere.
Yes,
Anywhere there seem to be brown and black people, because our communities can be, taken advantage of so easily, so easily.
absolutely.
Corporations have, dare I say, agreements with governments
Mhm.
and with developers. We need to put this here. So we're
Yes,
talking about planning now too. We're talking about urban planning, right?
right.
We're talking
And
about
what's
urban
also
planning.
funny, and what I also find interesting is that it's very difficult to develop these coalitions with people other than brown and black people, because this is all one planet. It's the only one we live. I mean, I love sci-fi. I do love sci-fi, and I understand. I'm all about Star Wars, where we can go to Alderaan, and you know, we can go to Coruscant. I mean, I can name my Star Wars
All
planets,
right
but
now.
until that becomes real,
Right, right.
this is the only one we have.
I'm Battlestar
So
Galactica. I'm BSG. So.
exactly. Look, and in that one we were on the run because humanity
Oh, we sure
was
were.
dying. So we have to learn to work together. And
We
so the
do.
message that I would give is that you have your conservatives, and they like to talk about their Second Amendment rights, how they want to go hunting for the deer and all of that. And so I look at it like this: you poison the water, the same water that the deer drinks. You go out, you kill the deer, you eat the deer that's been ingesting these bad chemicals, and you just fed your child.
Right.
Okay, does that not impact your thought in terms of how you want to keep your environment? Because it's all connected. Here again, one planet. It doesn't just go away. So we got to do something about
Wow. Wow. Technology. I think someone was trying to call me just now, but I have absolutely no idea where the call was even coming from. But
that.
that was over. So Damon, I want to thank you because our communication has sparked a few things in me. As we started talking, I mentioned that I was on the city's Bicyclist and Pedestrian Safety Committee,
Right.
which reports to I guess the transportation traffic and transportation committee for the city council. And we had some pretty big tasks over the past few weeks. We need to make recommendations on how the city is going to safely reopen in this new world and in this new environment. I hate the term new normal. I've been
Mm-hmm.
thinking about
I
somewhat,
love it.
no, we say normal wasn't working, but right, normal wasn't working.
Oh, it wasn't working.
Because we're at the
I agree
place,
with that. I didn't say that it did. So we got to find something new.
yeah, the somewhat familiar, the strange and but somewhat familiar.
Make some kind of adjustment, either reform or scrap it and do something different.
We
But that goes
totally
to a whole
are. But
different
we are.
conversation.
We are. Think about how much change we've had in the last couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
This just yesterday marked what, 5 years since the passage of the same-sex marriage laws.
Has it been? Okay.
I think so, 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So, since then we've had DACA protections, we've had LGBTQ
Mm-hmm.
protections in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
We're pushing legislation for hate crime and police reform. Like, this has been an incredible 2-3 months
Mm-hmm.
for change. We've
It's
rapidly
been
moved
great.
forward. We have
It's been
rapidly
great.
moved forward. And we're continuing to move forward into a new day, which is the
Yeah.
name of the podcast, a forecast, the new day. Thank you so much, Damon, for being a guest. Oh, I was gonna go into the CCL and the work that you encouraged me to do that plays off of
Yeah.
the work from the bike peds. So
How's
Damon
it
put me
going?
on to the Citizens Climate Lobby,
Mm-hmm.
which needed some more representation from people of color, because we're sitting here having this conversation about the environment. We love the environment. We live on this earth. We breathe the same air that everyone breathes, try to drink the
Mm-hmm.
same water everyone drinks. So I've always had a passion for it. And
Mm-hmm.
you put me onto the CCL. So tell me a little bit more about your experience with the Citizens Climate Lobby.
It's been pretty good. You know, it's different in that with it being a nationwide organization,
Mm-hmm.
and it's supposed to have a broad perspective in terms of environmentalism. So you'll find people that are kind of middle of the road. You'll find unapologetic lefties like myself, and so we all collaborate on these on this environmental issue. And so we have there's legislation out there that we're trying to support in energy innovation, that we're trying to make sure to get supported and get passed. And I did some research in support of that to deal with the economics of it.
Okay.
And that's been interesting. It's work that I've not seen done before, because what I want to see is that while we want to promote environmentalism, and we want to develop the technology that can come from environmentalism, and of course the technology, it spurs the economy. I would like to make sure that Black and brown people are able to participate in that.
Mhm. Yes.
Historically, there have when you have these business innovations and all of that, and the spark in the economy, the question is whether or not Black people are able to participate. Now, we want to go all the way back in history. Obviously, whenever Black people have had any kind of major change economically in order to build wealth as a community, it has been destroyed,
Yeah.
physically, actually terrorized to death.
Yes.
Now we are in a place that there's more innovation coming, but we didn't have the generational wealth of hundreds of years to be able to invest in this new technology as our white counterparts.
But the
So
technology is while there's still a divide, obviously, right?
yes,
There's a big digital divide and an innovation
uh-huh.
divide between the capabilities of our communities. There's obviously no loss or lack in our community, but
Mm-hmm.
the technology, isn't it being an equalizer, so to speak? Aren't we
It
able to
will be.
propel forward with our ideas and innovations and businesses?
Theoretically, it can be, but the my research is showing that, and I say research. This is me reading other people's reports.
I understand.
Okay, so don't let me act like I went out and tested and figured this out firsthand. But
It's
like when you
college all
talk about,
over.
it's assembling it, synthesize. This is me synthesizing information. So when you have, like for example, your solar panels that are out there, um, most Black people have not had that exposure. We
Mm-hmm.
haven't had that installed in our roofs. We have not had that kind of inclusion. We
Mm-hmm.
haven't been a part of it because really environmentalism, while it's important, is not a, a major part of our conversation, because when you're thinking about things like Elijah McClain being murdered, when you're thinking about George Floyd and whether or not you can survive tomorrow,
Yeah.
worrying about the climate 100 years from now is not going to get it. To me, the way people have marketed the environmental conversation to Black people, to brown people, it's a more privileged conversation. It's the
That's
privilege of
cool.
being
That's an
able to
interesting
speak
way to
about,
put it. Wow, that is yes, that's
you
definitely the
know,
way we look at environmental issues differently. White people,
yes.
and Black people.
But
Um,
it's important for us to be able to be included in that. Like I was telling you, with these companies that put their businesses, their smokestacks and everything in
right,
our neighborhoods,
right,
and they want to come to us and don't want to go anywhere else. So
right.
there it is. There's environmentalism that's involved, but you have to think about it and speak of it in a relevant way. Solar panels are something that can help with getting our carbon down, in terms of energy, innovation, well, being
Efficiency.
innovative in terms of being efficient. And we need to be included in that. And we haven't been as included. The development of this technology.
Right.
So not just to be users, but to be producers and
Yes.
sellers,
Yes.
to be investors.
Yes.
To what extent are we represented? Are we represented in the boardrooms? Are we represented in the conversations? Are we represented in the marketing?
In
Are
the
we
field.
represented in the use? And the
Right.
answer is no on all of it.
Right. Right. Same with
But we
them.
all need to work together, because it's not going to be just white people by themselves that make it. It's not going to be just Asian people or just Black people or just anybody by themselves that's going to make it. We have to pull together to save this planet together.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. It feels good to have someone other than myself, trying to, say these things. My best friend April will tell you, she stayed over one day and like I literally turned the water off on her in the shower. Like, that's it.
That's it.
That's what we do here.
That's it.
That's it. Okay.
GASSIT. That's it.
But I think Flint, we talk about how the environment tends to be a privileged conversation, or enjoying the environment is a privilege. But then you have a situation like Flint where the basic of necessities,
Right.
clean water.
Right. It's clean water.
Water.
And then
That
also
people
look
couldn't
at,
enjoy.
yeah. And then of course, that Floyd. I mean, that's Flint is just one aspect, of environmental racism. And I'm gonna Columbus that for a second, environmental
Okay.
racism.
Okay.
And I say I'm Columbusing because that thing was out there for a while and I didn't know about it. But because I just found out, I'm gonna pretend that I made it up and it was all me and only me. So I'm gonna Columbus this conversation.
Okay.
So that is one example of where environmental racism is coming in, because you can't convince me that every time there's an ecological problem or environmental issue, or we want to do waste and all of that, or we want to mistreat some aspect of drinking water or breathable air, that for some reason, I don't care where we are, if we're in Michigan, Chicago, Alabama, California, wherever, some kind of way it just lands on Black people.
Yeah.
And that just, it bothers me. And so to me, it's just taking advantage. You're destroying the planet, but see what happens is you're doing it's a slow death, because yes, you're destroying the planet, but you're doing it in a way that the people who are not listened to, the canary in the coal mine that you don't want to hear from, they're the ones that are speaking up because they're the ones that are impacted by it. But because nobody's listening, nobody does anything about it. But then if nobody listens, eventually it'll be too late. And we would have reached the point of no return. And then what? Now we want to talk about it as a problem, as an emergency, when you could have got at it in the very beginning. But it's like that with everything, whether it's health, violence, or anything. Wow. You have to nip it in the bud.
Yeah, I stopped to bring out one of the first books that I had in understanding this, Dumping in Dixie.
Okay.
Bullard. Yeah, this is one of the first in seminal works. This is Race, Class, and Environmental Quality. There's a new book that just came out by a woman named Harriet Washington. It's called A Terrible Thing to Waste. It is going to be, or it is, along the same lines as A Book as Strong as This, or Marvel's book about, Malcolm X. So, these really seminal works on environmental injustice. And then, we talk about, we don't want to just have this conversation about Black people. It's Black and brown and indigenous and our Indian brothers and sisters, on the Native Americans on reservations whose water is just as horrible as that in Flint, Michigan. And just, I sat in on a planning call yesterday. And I won't belabor this because, we've had a great conversation and I don't want to lose people, but I sat in on a planning conversation with a lot of, people of color, mostly women planners. I
Mm-hmm.
think the driving conversation might have started with some type of misogyny. I wonder why there weren't more men, but it
Mm-hmm.
was a women themed event. Happy to have all conversations, and the humanity, the empathy, the thought in the conversation that we had was excellent. I was happy to connect with the women from that. Some of the stuff that I'll just share the main thing that was a really great takeaway. And it could be pie in the sky and it could be oh so granola, but like
Mm-hmm.
the first entity that experienced environmental injustice was the earth itself.
Mm-hmm.
The earth itself. And we're
Yeah.
still not in the right mind frame as far as our relationship with the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And I keep saying this, people, if you think that we're going to get out of this COVID situation, right, with the same behaviors as it relates to the environment, you are
Mm-hmm.
deeply mistaken.
Yeah.
Okay. As Albert Einstein said, we cannot solve the problems with the same thinking that created it. So I
Absolutely.
mean, I don't want to see your gloves in the sewers. I don't want to see your masks in the sewers. I want us to be responsible. I want us to think about we're home now. That means you need to be recycling more.
Mm-hmm.
You need more energy efficient, light bulbs and recycled products in your home. It's
What
time
we're
for
not
us.
recognizing is that we are a part of the earth, and the dominant mentality is how we as humans will dominate and control the planet. But to me, it doesn't work like that. I think that if anybody has taken the moment to study science at all,
Shout
you
out
know,
to Jalo.
I mean, just think about it. Just even when we go super cosmic and talk about how all of us are made of stardust, because everything, every atom in our body, and everything that we see is generated from some star somewhere that at some point detonated and sent out the atoms all over the place, and then they of course collected, spun, and built and grew until you have planets and other celestial bodies. We grew as a part of the earth. And
Mhm.
without getting into all the religion of it, just looking again at science, everything in your body, even when you study your metabolism, how it is you're able to live, when you eat food, we are grown from the earth. The food we eat is of the earth, and then we when we die, we return to the earth. um, Bugs eat us. We
Yeah,
become whatever. We become
yeah.
energy for the next thing. So that's everything about us. Every human who has ever lived, in some way, the atoms of all of that comes back to us. We are a part of this thing, and we have to learn to live with some level of balance and to respect where it is we come from, because we are part of this earth. We're not a separate entity. You can't go anywhere else and see people right now. This, we are a part of this thing. So we can either be a we can have a symbiotic relationship as some of the bacteria in our intestinal lining, or we can be the virus that needs to be killed. So in the end, the earth itself is the body. So
Ah,
the earth will make a decision. Are we the
yes, she
bacteria,
will.
or are we the virus?
Yes, she will. Yes, she will.
you know
Hey, wow, Damon, I was going to ask you for some more closing words, but that seems like the perfect place to wrap up right there. I want to
yes,
thank
ma'am.
Damon, my guest, my Morehouse brother, my brother in the fight for environmental justice. This has been an episode of The Forecast. Thank you so very much.
Yes,
My
ma'am.
name
Thank
is
you.
Najima. um, you're watching this, and I hope that you've enjoyed the programming. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at NAJDAVWASH until I change it. And you can find me on the Urban Music Report channel. So this has been an episode of The Forecast, A New Day. And I am your host, Najima Davis Washington. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll leave you with a proverb, an African proverb. I like to pull these out. Only a fool trips on what is behind him. All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night.